Hi, everybody.
Hello.
How many of you came to my self-care talk? Now you get more of me. I'm just kidding. So I just want to get right into it because we only have a limited amount of time, but I would love to get a survey from the audience of how many of you guys have a diversity and inclusion strategy within your communities? All right, how many of you don't? All right, good. So we're going to try and make this as tactical as possible so you can take away a lot from this. So I wanted to start with a question, which is if anyone approaches you and they're like, why diversity and inclusion, what do you respond with? Hannah, let's start with you.
Great. So with Tech Ladies, I mean, first and foremost, within our own community, I think for Tech Ladies, we're building a community for women and non-binary folks, so it's pretty obvious like why diversity and inclusion matter for us. But I think first and foremost, like social responsibility and moral obligation to have diversity within our community. We know that by investing in diversity, we're going to elevate more voices, we're going to have more innovation within the community, and we're going to be able to all support each other better and also address a lot of blind spots that, that may come out, so.
Tunde?
Yeah, so at StreetCode Academy, similarly, we already have, we start off with this notion that diversity matters. We're focused on underrepresented minorities, black and brown, in the city of East Palo Alto, in the heart of Silicon Valley. So most of the time, people come with that shared assumption. But for us, there's two cases. There's the business case and there's the bigger case. The business case is that the face of our nation is changing. Anyone who knows Code 2040, they know this based on the idea that by 2040, whites will no longer be the majority and that it's going to be a minority-majority country, and the world is in that same pace. We know that the face of technology doesn't reflect that. 90% or 97% are either white or Asian, and 85% are men, so you see a disconnect. And then furthermore, which makes the gap even wider, or at least more compelling to me, is that these minority communities are over-indexing, particularly black and brown, on mobile devices, on social media. So there's a disconnect between the consumers and the users. You bridge that gap, you're gonna make better products. But then, to me, the more compelling case for me to make is that we need leadership. We need people, to your case, like this moral. We need people with a moral standard. We can't always follow the data and say, okay, the data says this, so therefore we have to do this. My mentor says that artificial intelligence is just that, it's artificial. My mentor says that you put a smartphone on a phone, set a fire, the phone's not gonna go anywhere, so it's not really that smart. Like, we have to do the driving as humans based on our values. And so if we value inclusion, if we truly value that genius is equally distributed, we need to act on that and give everyone a chance. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with everything the fellow panelists said. Great points, great points. I need to find you a mentor. My thing is, we look at the state of the world, right? And we talking about diversity, inclusion, and communities that why it matter. Yes, the business case. Yes, look at the data. Yes, do what's morally right. And if you combine all of that, it's like, how can you not be thinking about diversity and inclusion in your communities and what you do in terms of everyday life? It's there, it's in your face. And then in the black community, we talk about how like our culture permeates everything, right? It's like you look at, our culture, music, trends, dancing, you name it, it's everywhere. But yet, we don't see that in the companies. We don't see it in community. We don't see it in the leaders. We don't see it in the investors. So being that you all are community managers, diversity and inclusion, it's not hard to find the data. Just Google it. Go find the data, have the data, use the data. I saw David's slides earlier. He talking about how most communities don't connect their communities to their CRM, so they can't even tell the ROI, right? But there's data that shows diversity and inclusion increases the ROI. So all you smart people, if you want to continue to be successful and have a successful ROI, diversity and inclusion matters. That's from a business case. From a moral case, I just think you're not a good human, personally, if you're not valuing all humans and all backgrounds, right? At Change College, we do a conference called Take Inclusion, And we mean everybody. We don't mean exclusion of one person of this. We're not saying exclusion of white males. We're saying inclusion, right? I care about everybody. I want everyone to be successful. And that's kind of my approach on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so in the communities I work with, so I work with the disability community, 1 in 4 Americans is disabled, invisible and visible. And so why aren't 25% of our workforces or our communities represented in that space as well? And I thought what you mentioned, Tunde, about the consumer versus who's actually building the product and the disconnect there was really fascinating as well. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that when we talk about diversity, diverse is not a person. Diverse is a group, is a community. So a person isn't diverse. And I just wanted to make sure I put that out into the world as well, because if we have shared language that we come into this conversation with, we can actually further propel it forward. But also talking to you, Tunde, earlier, which is like, if people come to me and they're like, why should I hire disabled people, or like, et cetera, I was telling him that, people with disabilities globally have $1 trillion annual of disposable income. And so there's a disconnect between thinking that disabled people aren't consumers. Anyway, business case, et cetera. So the stats are all there. I hope you'll all look for them within the specific communities that you're trying to recruit into the communities that you run as well. So I wanted to talk, I think what's unique about this panel is we have a bunch of community professionals here, and every single time we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's always about the hiring side. Like, how can we hire more underrepresented communities and have them represented in our group? But now you guys are running communities. How can you increase diversity and inclusion within them? So I'd love to hear, so each one of you, runs communities that are focused on multiple or one underrepresented identity. What are you doing to foster diversity and inclusion within your communities? Like, what's a strategy that's working?
Yeah, so I'll start. So Facebook, Tech Ladies has an online Facebook group with over 30,000 members. And so we've had to take a lot of pains to make sure that we are actually inclusive within the community. The first thing is having a really clear code of conduct and enforcing it, basically taking swift action against anything like racism, discrimination, ageism, ableism, anything like that, and really standing behind that code. Another one is making sure that it feels like a safe space for our community members. By doing so within Tech Ladies, we have a forum for anonymous feedback and anonymous asks. So women and non-binary folks who don't want to have their names or profile photos attached to their posts in the community, or if they want to solicit feedback or give feedback to us as community moderators, there are both forums for them to send feedback to us anonymously, as well as to get their posts posted anonymously so that they can crowdsource wisdom from the community without having to come forward themselves. So just making sure that we put some operational structure in place to creating inclusive spaces online is really important.
And is that code of conduct something that is public, that people can?
100% public, easily consumable, very short, to the point of the Mozilla conversation around having like short privacy policies, short codes of conduct that are just like really easy to remember and internalize. It's available up on our Facebook page. If you're a member of our free community, you can access it.
That's good. So we're a startup. We've grown from 20 students 4 years ago. We offer free technology classes in East Palo Alto and surrounding communities of color. And so we started out with 20 students about 4 years ago, and now we just finished our summer session this year, and we served 1,400 students this year. And so we've grown, and one of the things that we grew from was we actually started just serving 16 to 24-year-olds. And it was a target population that we thought was job ready, and that was the way to impact a community like East Palo Alto. What we found quickly was that there were people who were much younger than that, who had an aptitude for technology, who desired it. There were people who were older than that wanted to do that. And so we quickly adapted, I think is one of the things. We quickly adapted to become all ages. We adopted the notion, I think Wayne alluded to this, that innovation, it has no zip code, it has no age, it has no gender, it has no personal background or ethnic background. Like, innovation can look in any and all forms, and so we have to be truly inclusive. And so we opened it up to everybody. It's open to all ages, and it has a true community vibe. And when you come from a point that you believe that diversity is actually going to make the ecosystem more rich, I think people can feel that. I think later on, I'm looking forward to being able to adopt what you've built by actually articulating that. But clearly, you had the presence and the vibe of that before you even perhaps articulated it. So that's what we've done. We've tried to be as inclusive as possible and allow people of all ages, all ethnicities, et cetera, to be a part.
And for us, it's such ironic because it's timing, because we're coming up on our 50 years, as I alluded to earlier, with Tech Inclusion, and we've literally been across the world doing this event. So we started off a community in 2015 of 0 to now, I think it's some 20,000 people who have participated in our events over the past 5 years. So we had to take into account of the different levels of diversity in those different communities. Diversity means it's something different in Detroit, Nashville, Tennessee, Melbourne, Australia, London, Sydney, Australia, Austin, Texas. Diversity is different in all those different communities. And so to foster that, one thing we did was to make sure that the people are in those communities feel empowered, and similar to what everyone else has said, feel empowered to be themselves. And so they feel it's a safe community. And also, a community will start thriving in terms of diversity when people who are diverse are sharing their experiences or being the voice of that community, right? If I'm a black man, if I go to a community and I see that I'm the only black man there, and I'm not going to be feeling empowered to speak up, to be empowered to engage in the community. Physically, offline, as David mentioned earlier, as the same thing online. Can actually be voiced online as well. So in the diverse community we've created and curated is about empowering the people there, yes, code of conduct, and then also make sure that we're swift with any negative engagement. There's in my mind, there's zero tolerance for any type of ism, racism, sexism, you name it, in any type of community. There's there should be no pass, right? Like someone puts up a Confederate flag with the intent to be racist towards other ethnic groups, then that person needs to be banned. And so we have a zero tolerance. There's no room for that, in my opinion, in 2019 going to 2020.
Yeah. I have this saying that bullying is not a productive use of your power and privilege, and have zero tolerance for it, of course. So I'm hearing code of conduct. I know Tech Inclusion has one that I've seen and I really appreciate as well. And I think for all of us who are creating communities, having something to turn back to. And then I love the adaptability of people coming who want access to the community and having the flexibility to also be swift to be able to expand what the membership looks like. I'm going to go a little off the cuff here because I heard two of you, Hannah and Wayne, mention safe spaces. And in a lot of the work that I do, I have actually stopped using the term safe space because our safe space is really safe, and changed it to brave spaces. And so I'm curious to hear kind of how you're seeing that shift in your community. Do you feel like they're safe? What does psychological safety look like? How can that be fostered tactically?
Yeah, I love the shift from safe to brave. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think for tech ladies, we've still started using, or been using safe space because women and non-binary folks experience so much discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace. And a lot of people come to tech ladies to talk about that, try to get help or solicit feedback around how they can navigate a toxic culture. And so we really do want them to feel safe. And so we really do say, how can we make this a safer space for you? How can you feel safe within this community? How can you feel like, coworkers that are being toxic are not going to see you interact? That's why we have the anonymous forums. So I love the shift. I think it's really important. I think safety is also really important for us, at least.
I like it. It's one of the things where I keep in mind that for some people, they may not be at the level or the readiness to be brave. And so it's like, be mindful that someone can literally walk in the door and they could still feel like feared, right? They're scared. They don't want a guy to say something to them that could, a guy don't want another person to say something to them. So it's just like, I want to feel safe. And then there's others walking in the room that, you know, I feel brave, feel confident. I'm on stage. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. I'm going to feel empowered. If someone says something inappropriate with me, I'm going to tweet at them. I'm going to do that. They can feel brave and feel empowered. So it's one of the things like as humans, I agree with both. Personally, I wouldn't try to push one and say this is better than that one because I think everyone comes at a different level.
It's almost like this Maslow's hierarchy in a way to say, first you kind of need this foundational level in order to be courageous or be brave, etc. Great. All right, so now we're going to turn to some juicier topics. I want to hear about what's not working. Who's missing from your communities? What are, what's not working?
I'll start off. Historically in communities and in the tech culture and the tech industry, we've been doing this since the tech companies released their diversity numbers. And I have a thought. It'd be real interesting, and you all let me know if this happened. Has any of you all communities put out like the diversity of your communities? Has that happened? Anyone done that? One? Once. Give this one a round of applause, please.
And what's your company so we can look it up? Ooh, 4.0 schools.
I
do
know.
4.0
Yes,
schools.
yes. Good, great job. But I say that because the lack of accountability. Like, this is not working. It's like you have the CEO say one thing, the global head of diversity say one thing, you have the press article say another, and then we do consulting, and I can walk into any company and talk to 3 to 5 people, and they can identify the human or the humans that is causing the culture not to be great, or the culture to be toxic, or doing inappropriate things, not want to hire underrepresented people, not want to increase diversity. You can point to those humans, and you can point to the bad behavior they're doing where they should be fired, and nothing will happen. And that lack of accountability, I say, is not working.
So the accountability of bad actors, like no repercussions for bad actors.
Yes.
So I absolutely admire the transparency of companies, as Wayne was mentioning. Another thing that I think is really important for me personally and for us as an organization is to focus on what is working and focus on the progress. The scripture I walked in here with said, focus on what is right, on what is pure, on what is just, and then peace, and the peace of God shall fill you. So for me, I think it could be, I'm a sensitive, emotional person. So when I look at the landscape and see what I feel is a wrong done to so many communities, it's easy to be full of destructive or unconstructive feelings. And so I want to focus on what's right. So here, let me give you some examples of what is working. What is working is a focus on the companies, even if it's one out of a stadium, right? Focus on the companies that are making the progress. Focus on the people that are making the change, because oftentimes we accept a narrative that isn't true. At StreetCode, we started out, again, 16 to 24-year-olds focusing on skills, but we quickly shifted, not just in ages, not just in moving from coding to other areas of design and entrepreneurship, but we also moved from our outcomes. And our outcomes are no longer just skills. It's also network around community. And the biggest patty in our cheeseburger, as we have said, but is mindset, And so for me, Tiffany, the way you described your community, right, as having asset. We're $1 billion. That's an asset. Then you
Trillion.
$1 trillion. Sorry, $1 trillion. Thank you. And then you said with friends, now we're $30 trillion, right? So there's an asset-based approach. And so for us, what's working is focus on mindset. With us, is focus on narrative. With us, it's move on. If a company doesn't see the value in the communities that we care about, we need to move on, because there are people out there who, like the people in the room, who care about it and who want to do it. And we need to spend time, I'm preaching to myself, I need to spend time working with those folks who are willing to make the progress and focus on people who are doing right.
So like continue to build your coalitions, like who your allies, bring them closer.
Yes, and celebrate what's working.
I mean, I love that.
How do
Obviously.
you talk about bad things after that?
Yeah, right? How do I go back to what's not working? It's like, I can't follow up with that. No, but just to be totally real and transparent, I mean, there's a lot of stuff when we started building Tech Ladies that didn't work for us at first and figuring out how to scale a community. We're a bootstrap team, and there's only one full-time member working on it, and everyone else, I mean, I have a full-time job. Everyone else has kind of side jobs going that are investing in the community. So we learn from our mistakes. We learn from failures. One thing we learned really early on is that it's really difficult in a community where a lot of people are engaging and participating in discussions to moderate conversation hijacking, for example. One very specific example of this is someone posted about ageism in tech, a woman who was over 40 and talking about ageism in tech, and another woman responded and she was like, yes, ageism in tech. Like as a 22-year-old, I feel like people don't take me seriously. And there was a massive community explosion and talking about what is ageism in tech and how do we take space and when do we need to make space to talk about these issues, because when you have a diverse community, when you have people of all ages, it can be difficult to figure out a way to support and make space for those conversations. And we really had to as a community moderator say like, hey, listen, like this thread is about ageism for women over 40, and we can start a separate thread to talk about what it feels like to be discriminated against for being maybe too young or too inexperienced. But this is not the space for it in this thread in particular. And navigating those conversations without alienating people is really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. And I think we learn through stumbling, and we learn through getting feedback from the community, getting tough feedback. Another example is we use these hashtags to organize our community posts, and one of our hashtags is Help a Sister Out. We had it when we were starting for women to get help from each other, and we got feedback that it may be offensive because it was potentially using Black vernacular. And so we said, you know what, like, is this important to us? Can we get rid of it? Should we get rid of it? Like, it was kind of founded in female camaraderie, and maybe it's not working, and we had a discussion about that. So I think it's really important just to listen, active listening.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting here is kind of this so within the disability community, I think for a long time we've always operated from a scarcity mindset, as in terms of there's only one opportunity for the disabled person to talk on behalf of the entire community of 1.3 billion people. And the way we've built our community is through an abundance mindset, which is there is space for everyone. There is space for everyone to have their time, to have their voice. One thing I do appreciate within our community is that people do hold me very accountable, like, hey, Tiffany, you shouldn't have tweeted that. And I think to be able to receive that feedback as well, even though it does hurt a little, but to be like, oh, I totally didn't realize that. I'm so sorry. Let me change the wording, et cetera. One other thing I'll add with what you said, Tunde, is I went to this climate change talk. Always got to bring climate change in, anytime we can. But the speaker was like, the only way we are going to lose this fight is if we continue to think of ourselves as losers. And what I thought was so interesting about that, and what it made me change in my behavior, was I used to talk about the disability community in terms of a marginalized community. But what marginalized inherently means is lacking power. And so instead, at least for me, I stopped using that, because every single time I use that term, I am stripping power from my community. And that is not a narrative that I want to continue to bring forward. Like, everything about me is like positivity and pride and strength within your disability narrative. So I really like that. Yes?
I had a point I want to bring up. I love Tunde's strategy. I love the strategy, but there's something that that's a pet peeve in this diversity conversation. I think we should, that I would like to touch on is, one is about that's not working is shaming. There's so much shaming happening right now on social media, especially Twitter. And I feel like at some point we have lost our way of going about doing business, right? Like you can call out, so everyone has an opinion. Everyone can voice their opinion now on various platforms. But then and I give a prime example, this happened with us at Tech Inclusion recently. Someone tweeted at us, like, hey, I don't see any Native American speakers on your website. I don't like this. I came last year, I'm going into now do my own Native American gathering the day of your conference. I don't see any Native American speakers. And this person is only looking at these people's pictures, don't know their backgrounds. We do a survey, speakers have to fill out the profile and tell us their ethnicity to opt in. We had 3 to 4 Native American speakers, and we had some more we hadn't announced yet. And so we had to choose to engage with this person because he felt empowered to like attack us. And it was his right. But is there a better way of doing that?
Yeah.
All right, it could have been more, it could have been a better way of doing that. And we've seen way more worse things than that. So I just want to be mindful of shaming.
Yeah.
Not always the best strategy.
Yeah. Assume best intent is one in our code of conduct.
I like that.
Assume best intent. I guess the other thing I'll add about shame too is I think, and again, I was talking about shared language earlier, so I'm going to contradict myself as well, but I think we get so caught up in language that we actually end up using it as a weapon to shame other people. And so, yeah, I think on this topic of shame, it's almost like how are we approaching just this conversation? Is it in a way to say, you're not doing this, you're not doing that? And that doesn't feel good when someone comes to you and says, I don't see myself represented. There's another term called tone policing, which is this idea that we don't know what that person's experience was, but there is something that is triggering them in the lineup or who knows, and how can we meet each other where we are from both sides? Because that person has something they want to express and needs the space to do that and feels like they are being heard when they express that to you. So kind of I was being devil's advocate a little bit. But, okay, so tactical. Let's stay tactical. So if I am like, okay, I'm ready to increase diversity and inclusion in my community, but I don't even know where to start, what do I do?
I mean, I think a theme we've been hearing all day is build one-on-one relationships with people. Reach out to people. Make yourself available. My Facebook DMs are open. My Twitter DMs are open to my community. I try to make time to connect with people, get on the phone with Tech Ladies members, solicit feedback. If people decline membership or say, hey, this doesn't sound like it's for me, I'm like, hey, why? Why not? At events we host, the first thing I ask people in attendance is, what did we miss? What was lacking? You know, why wouldn't you come back to a conference? What did you like? And so I think just building those one-on-one relationships with your community, especially in the beginning, is just like so important. You need to build for what your community wants, not what you think they want.
Yeah, I would say move with the intention for success, and so you can make any particular move. I think what oftentimes people are forced or shamed into making a move, and then it fails, and so it's like, I told you so, we were doing the right thing. As opposed to, Derek Anderson, who founded Startup Grind, the first time I had a meeting with him, he did something extremely crazy, and he invited our 3-4 person organization into his office to share it. Took his key off the first time, 20 minutes into the meeting, gave me a key. That was with the intention to support, to succeed. He had no idea what we would become, how the relationship would evolve over time. He could have easily gotten burned by that. But I think what he's earned from our community is a extreme amount, right? I hope to give more than I got, if that makes sense. And so I think if people move with that intention to invest in somebody, I'll take you on, and if you don't know how to behave in our environment, we're gonna actually help you learn the customs, and we're not gonna, you didn't make it, let you go. We're gonna walk with you with the intent to have shared success.
Yes to everything that both panelists said, and also something Tiffany said earlier was about, have a shared language. And there's all these fundamental things that should be just human basics. And you all in business, you all manage communities, this stuff is not rocket science, right? It is not. If you want to increase diversity in your communities, like literally, it's a matter of how much do you really want to increase diversity in your community, right? It's like, it's not hard. It's not hard. Like, do you want to make a new friend that can help you gain $1 million? If you can meet one person that's connected, let me start over. I have a goal to always be connected to one person, to the person I want to reach, right? If that's President Obama, is that Ryan Coogler, is that Steph Curry, be 1 or 2 persons away from the person I want to get access to, right? So you want to increase diversity in the community, in your communities. What does that mean? You need to be 1 or 2 persons away from the community you want to develop. If you don't have any LGBTQ friends, get some. If you don't have any black women friends, get some. There's one right there. right? If you don't have anybody who's hidden disabilities, you have, like if you're hidden disabilities, visible disabilities. Still, ask on Twitter. I need help understanding disabilities. Accessibility. Ask. Get a friend. But like you said, I love this aspect, what you said to me about success. Because be real from that point on. Talk about your why you want to do this, understand the shared language, and be mindful of tokenism. If you don't know what tokenism is, Google that shit. Because I'm not, So, do that, and then go out and just do it. Don't be afraid. If there's people out there, people will shame you, people will come at you, people will attack you, people will say mean things. Those are not the people you want to do business with, like Tuni said, like they said. Find people who support you, who go along with your shared vision, who may look different or be different than you. But do one thing, value them. The problem with our society in this diversity conversation, I believe, is that we don't value other humans just because we are different. And no matter what that different is, school, pedigree, I got gray hair, I don't have gray hair, disability, age, doesn't matter. Value them as a human being as if they're your relative that you love and care about.
Beautiful.
Here, here.
So Hannah, Tunde, Wayne, thank you so much. We can have this could be the whole day. We only have 25 minutes. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
I forgot, guys. It's a standing ovation. Come on. You know how it is in CMX.
Come on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you guys both are all wonderful.